So welcome everybody to another episode of pdsatsea. We have a real treat here today. We have one of the newest program directors in the New York City metropolitan area, Dr. Erik Romanelli. If I'm wrong, Erik, you can correct me. He did his training for medical school at Tulane, went to Montefiore for his residency training, down to Columbia for a year in obstetric anesthesiology fellowship, and is back at Monty and is now taking over as the new program director. Welcome, Erik. Thank you
for having me. Thank you.
And then Dr. Adam Levine, I believe, and you can correct me, is the longest serving residency program director in the United States. He is a Mount Sinai lifer, did his medical school at Mount Sinai, then did his intern year in residency at Mount Sinai, and took over the residency training program over 2 decades ago. Full disclosure, he's also my friend, mentor, role model, and former program director. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Brian, and thanks for inviting me to this podcast. I really do appreciate it. A couple of corrections. I took over the program nearly 3 decades ago, since 1996.
Outstanding. So I'm actually going to stay quiet and stay in the background. We wanted this opportunity for those of you looking to be residency program directors or starting out to get some advice from someone who's not only long-serving, but who is also arguably the best in the business. So Dr. Romanelli has prepared some questions and is going to get insight from Dr. Adam Levine about the game. Thanks, guys. Go right ahead.
Thank you.
Great. All right. So being a new PD myself, I thought I would ask you first about starting out in the role. I realize by my mathematics, I guess you've been doing this for about 27 years since you stepped into the PD role. With all the experience you've had as a PD, I'm certain you have invaluable advice for almost anyone, whether they're aspiring to the role or newly coming into it, or you're on autopilot like Dr. Mahoney, or maybe you're a PD who is starting to wind down. So looking back, say on when you first started, is there any piece of advice that you got in your first years as program director that made a difference in helping you adapt to the role?
I mean, I think actually my mentor, who was the reason I wanted to come to Mount Sinai, was a guy named Richard Kane, who was the program director at the time. As he was handing off the mantle, he made the following comment: assume nothing. I passed that down to generation after generation, because I will tell you, 1 year into my into running the residency, I made the grave assumption that I didn't confirm at the time. Applying for and taking the in-training exams was paper. There was no internet. The residents had to fill out a placard and supply a check that needed to go in, and it all had to be collated, signed by the then chairman of the department, and sent to the ABA. Well, the first couple of things were done, but it never made its way to the ABA, and in fact, it never got signed by the chairman, and they literally sat on a desk in the administrator, and apparently, from what I was told, many administrators from the ABA called our program multiple times, spoke to administrators to tell them that they still hadn't received the applications for the in-training exam. And lo and behold, I'm sitting in an OR a billion years ago, and my administrator comes in with a stack of applications for the ABA and says, Adam, can you sign these? Even though at the time it needed to be the chair. And I've already spoken to the ABA, and they said they would accept this. And I'm like, they're not going to accept this. And I think we are the only program in the whole country that year, again, about 26 years ago, that our residents did not take the in-training exam because the ABA refused to seat them. Interestingly, I actually tendered my resignation to the then chairman because of this failure. He laughed it off and said, no way. And ironically, all my residents at the time, which again, if you're aware that in the middle of the 1990s, the interest in anesthesiology had come to a stop, and we only had 7 residents. Each one of them was more than thrilled that they didn't have to go up there Saturday to take the in-training exam. So ultimately, what I thought was a catastrophic event, when I look back on it, it's humorous. I think this adds more. I don't take anything too seriously. Don't do this half-assed. Be as empathetic as you can for your students. I chose to do this as my career destiny. This was not a stepping stone, so which has made it as easy as possible to continue in what I do. And I see every day as not only a challenge, but also as an exciting opportunity to mentor and encourage the future generations of anesthesiologists. So, like I said, when I was knee deep in the catastrophe, I thought life was over. Looking back, nothing's that serious, and I let things roll off my back a lot easier.
That's great. I definitely identify with the idea that you really should assume nothing in this role. And, we learn from our mistakes. I'm glad your resignation was rejected. The role this past July, it's kind of like being shot out of a cannon. You think of the sheer bulk of requirements for the program director. For me, there was this immediate weight of it all. Like all of a sudden, I'm responsible for the educational experience, the physical and mental well-being, the professional development of these 70 residents. And I throw in kind of what I'm seeing in retrospect was hopefully a healthy dose of imposter syndrome too. I think about what I could have done to prepare for the role, and perhaps there is little that you could really do to prepare for it. You just have to go in with a confident attitude, and I'm not shy about asking for help when I'm out of my depths. So again, I thank you for that. I surmise you've seen a lot, over the course of your tenure, and you've witnessed the evolution of different generation learning styles. Technology's changed, with the advent of social media. I'll hone in first about just like resident attitudes towards training. Have you found that, say, the expectations and career aspirations of your incoming residents, that it's changed over time in any way?
Well, some of it might be true. What I don't think I've ever changed is our priorities. And I don't pull punches during interview season, recruitment, or while the residents are here. And I think they get the message loud and clear that we expect our residents to be professional and to also aspire to that this is not just a job. If they wanted a job, they shouldn't have perhaps gone into medicine, that our patients demand so much more. And again, during interview season, I don't gloss over or sugarcoat the idea that to be a superb anesthesiologist, as students training to become anesthesiologists, it's hard work. This is not a cakewalk. And I think when people are excited about that, when they're jazzed by the idea about how exciting it can be to be amazing in your job, when I've inspired someone to really, that's what they were looking for during the interview season, they're naturally drawn to it. So I think we naturally acquire students who might have those perceptions. So yes, over time, there is generational changes. And yes, over time, people want to learn more through, the social media aspects. And to me, I've seen over time that people learn through the question and answer banks. This was never something that that sat well with me. I wanted to know the full story about a situation. So I found that reading textbooks was the only way I was going to know. I try to inspire my students to do that, but it is hard to, redirect. And I certainly don't want to micromanage someone's, own learning style that has, for all intents and purposes, worked for them because they've really have risen to the cream of the crop in their generation. It's hard to retool what has worked for them.
I imagine when this podcast gets released, we're going to be in the thick of recruitment season. And I'll just ask, do you have any suggestions about ways that program directors and their teams, their recruitment teams, could improve upon their recruitment processes?
I don't know what everyone else is doing. I can tell you what we have done that has actually, what I believe has been extraordinarily successful. And it's recognizing how anxiety-ridden this whole process is for our students, and being as empathetic as possible, and demystifying the internet problem and the virtual nature. And I just come right out and tell them, hey, if your internet blips, or someone flushes the toilet in the background, or your dog barks, or your loved one comes knocking, it's okay. Those are things that are going to happen to us too. That already knocks down a peg. I think what we have done very successfully is duplicate and replicate what we have done in person. And what I've seen over time now, we're about to embark on our third virtual interview season, is that the students and the groups of students that matched with us, I think, are indistinguishable than the students that had matched with us in person. And so we try to be as natural as possible. We try to replicate, as much of being on site. We create a lot of opportunities for small group interactive opportunities so they can pick the brains of the residents and really get to know people. When the AAMC had given the nod for us to have an in-person option, we jumped at the chance to demystify some of that anxiety and neutralize it by giving some of the students opportunities to do a voluntary in-person opportunity, which has nothing to do with the departmental leadership or even the interview. I couldn't even tell you which of our students had done the tour or the happy hour because it's all from the residents. And so this is extremely important, but it's also exclusively for the student themselves. This has nothing to do with anything to do with how they get ranked, what the perception of the department or the program or the leadership of the program has about the students that show up or don't, because I couldn't tell you who does. And it's been a huge, amazing resource for the students to feel that we've, tried our best to provide them a window into, being a resident. Even when it was in person, you're talking a day is a leap of faith for a student to decide that they want to commit themselves to a place and decide that's where they want to become an anesthesiologist. Right. Now, virtual, forget about it. You're talking, talk about a leap of faith. And I do make it clear. My favorite line is, the anesthesiologist you become is where you become an anesthesiologist. Find the place that speaks to you. And we do our best to be as honest as possible. I never, even if someone was on site, want anyone to come here under false pretenses, because as I joke, I would not want to actively try to, sort of sugarcoat something, have someone have a misperception, and then come here and not be happy. Why would I want someone who wouldn't naturally thrive in our place? So part of it is we also create small group focus groups, so everyone can meet in smaller groups that have unique interests. We make it a point where the students themselves feel like they're in control, because this is nothing about what's happened virtually puts them in the driver's seat. They feel like it's a fairly significant lack of control. So we let them pick one of their the fourth interviewer. So they get to select who interviews them. I think that's a very novel opportunity. And so our whole interview process is really a pick your own adventure, from the focus groups to one of the interviews, to when they do the orientation overview, to whether they want to or not or can do the in-person opportunity.
Yeah, that's great. I do know that Sinai seems to do a great job of identifying their own medical students who ultimately, after even finishing residency, then even decide to stay on as faculty. Now, would you say it's probably a component of many things, but do you think it's because of the residency program itself? I know you create a culture of family, or do you think you found some kind of secret ingredient, maybe some identifiable trait in the medical students that you're recruiting that points to a greater likelihood that they might stay on, eventually be retained as faculty? I think we're all motivated to get residents to their respective fellowships or geographic locations, but identifying folks where it's an easy mutual decision that they want to stay and you definitely want them to stay on, it's definitely a bonus. So is that something that you're trying to identify, or it just develops organically during the course of residency?
Probably a combination of both, Eric. I think, even on the interview, during the interview, we make it really clear that I'm proud to say that a lot of Sinai students choose anesthesiology, even prouder that a lot of Sinai students want to stay. That is a source of pride. But even after that I'd say about 85% of our faculty are Sinai trained. And whether they leave and go have a fellowship and then come back to us, which happens fairly frequently, or they leave, go into private practice or go elsewhere and return, that also happens naturally. So when I make it clear to the student, and I think they find this also empowering, because we start working on their careers from day one of their residency. In addition, we also make it clear that we're not just sitting down with them to interview students where we believe they're going to be a exchangeable cog for 4 years, but that the likelihood is that we're sitting down to talk with their careers, and that the likelihood is that they will stay on as faculty. We create an environment where, as students and residents, they feel welcomed, nurtured, and feel like colleagues. So it's like a natural progression to stay as colleagues. 30 years ago, 26 years ago, 20 years ago, 15 years ago, I was accused of coddling our residents. That term coddling now is called wellness. Honestly, I always felt more aligned with the residents than the faculty, even to this day. They keep me youthful. It's shocking to me that I just turned 60 in April, and I don't see an end in sight in wanting to do this residency. Every day is a challenge, but also an accomplishment. I will aspire, no matter how much non-clinical time you need to accomplish, and the ACGME does mandate that you have non-clinical time. Never lose sight that you're a clinical anesthesiologist, because you want people to emulate you. And it would be talk about hypocrisy if I was recruiting students to be superb clinical anesthesiologists and I didn't find myself in the operating room showing them that I myself can still pull off this, an amazing awake intubation, or the most challenging of case, or the most difficult of sticks, or thinking through a differential. I think that's all the part of the role modeling, which creates the culture, which then creates the environment where people want to show up and then stay.
Now, I know you're a humble guy. You must know that you yourself, being in the PD role at Sinai, and your reputation, it's a considerable draw for your program. I'd probably say, your impressive 27-year tenure, it's something that many of us aspire to. So I'll ask, what do you think have been the critical contributing factors to your long tenure as program director?
I think this was my destiny. I was just very fortunate. So I had I guess it gets back to, listen, no one goes this alone. And it's a team sport. And I had great modeling myself and great mentorship. And I was fortunate to have recognized it. And I think people need to, like any student that's being recruited, or even faculty that are looking for positions to join, find the people that speak to you, and likely you're going to find the next set, the mentor or mentors that are about to, alter or have significant impact on your career. So that I was very fortunate to have selected Mount Sinai, just from the cultural aspect of being a student interviewing for medical schools. It just, for whatever reason, the place felt different and right. And I had no intention of doing anesthesiology like most students, but I was fortunate enough that Sinai had a required rotation in anesthesiology, and even more fortunate enough to let it seep inside me. And I recognized that that was my true calling. And even more fortunate to make an appointment with the then program director, who inspired me. I saw in him, he was the ultimate resident advocate and educator. And I knew that Richard was going to be my mentor. It just, I chose wisely. I came to Mount Sinai. I was fortunate enough to have been selected as one of the chief residents, which gave me insight into my next opportunity, which was, I liked problem solving not only in the operating room, but outside the operating room. And I really was given the opportunity to be that true resident, faculty, advocate, liaison. My opinions mattered. I was asked to problem solve, which I did. And I saw that my next sort of epiphany was that I wanted to work in the residency. And I remember that fateful day that I met with Richard and said, I want to be your assistant. He was kept his cards close to his chest. I didn't know what that meant. I thought maybe, well, my gosh, he must think I want his job, and I'm going to steal his job. Well, little did I know 3 years later, I was going to take the job. And I did, and I was so well prepared, because I never really took on, there was no such thing as assistant or associate program directors, really, that wasn't a thing. And and I just had great mentorship. So it is my pride to be able to also see all the mentees become mentors over the course of my career. So I approach things as excited as I was back then. I love watching the students grow from mentees to mentors. I love watching their careers, and I do love taking care of people, whether it's being, as going to medical school was the calling that I liked, taking care of people. Well, there's other aspects of the way to take care of people, and that's making sure that they are the best prepared doctors they can be. Encourage your students to be the best they can be. That takes lots of hard work. It doesn't just come, easily. And the reason why it takes hard work, because it's worth it. Which is also clear. I think as program directors, don't just fill with just because you want to fill with the best students. You want to fill with the students that will do their best in your program, whatever those attributes are. I do look for synergy also. And I'm probably not answering exactly why the longevity, but it means that, all of these are wins, which makes my life easy. Look for the synergy within the application where students have attributes that will thrive in your program. If you have a unique attribute, look for those students that will find that a unique opportunity, as opposed to, just looking at what your USMLE, I guess now 2 only, number is, or how far down. None of that matters. And again, have happy residents that therefore their successes will surround you with joy, and just, find joy in the difficulties. Paperwork is never pleasant. Don't go it alone. Surround yourself with a team. You can't do it alone. Collaboration is really, really important. Enrich and encourage your residents to be involved in running their own residency. That's important, so that they feel empowered by it, and empower them. Show little wins. Even if someone comes and says they have a recommendation, a complaint to this, fix it instantly. All of a sudden, you'll take on a moniker that you get things done, and that meeting with you matters, as opposed to it's just an empty promise. Don't do that. These are all little wins for major successes that I have found has created the virtue of the longevity and again, I love being able to pick up a phone and fix a problem and letting the resident know, hey, we fixed it.
I guess I'll just maybe finishing out, I'll say, for people who are coming into the program director role or hoping to be an APD or become PD one day, are there any, organizations that you would recommend people becoming involved in? Any other advice with regards to, how to better prepare yourself for the role?
Dare I say C. Imagine that. There's the plug for Brian. I think, first things first, obviously C does have a lot of resources, so that's really important. There's lots of webinars and lots of resources through ACGME. I think people, underestimate how important that is. There are also other societies and other aspects of what people can do to become superb in their educational skills, like IMSH or SSH, Society in Simulation and Healthcare. I think everyone has like a little niche that they can maybe bring to the table in terms of their educational opportunities. The GME, the local GME, has tremendous resources because over the course of time, the ACGME has really devoted a lot of oversight responsibility on the GME, and the GME creates these wonderful infrastructures that satisfy ACGME requirements for all the programs. All of those things, no matter whether it's Sinai or Monty or anywhere, the GMA becomes this huge, wonderful resource for potential people thinking they want to do this. And start small. Get involved with the didactic program, get involved with some organizational aspects, get involved with, just even going, meeting with the program to say, hey, what can I do to get involved? Hey, can I get involved with resident selection? Hey, can I get involved with the clinical competency committee? Hey, can I develop a key, signature lecture that I can start becoming an expert in and talking with the residents? Intraoperative teaching is always something that is enriched. And if you spend even 10 minutes a day, you're already identified as the go-to faculty member that is the superb educator. Try novel, unique things, come up with intraoperative teaching, shtick, whether it's the machine, whether it's fire, whether it's Remy Mazalam that's coming down the pike, or how to drive a bronchoscope, or how to do something novel. It doesn't matter. All of these amount to the residents and the students gravitating to you or recognizing that you are a tremendous resource. those are my recommendations, for anyone is thinking that they, and if you're staying in academics, have reasons to do it. It's easy now, sure, you can come, do your cases, plenty of cases to do and go home, but don't you want to mentor someone? Don't you want to bask in the benefit? There's so much data on the virtues of being a mentor, not only just the mentee, but, whether it's you're more satisfied at work, you're more productive scholarly, you'll have more publications, a quicker fast track to promotion, all of the reasons that make your career more satisfying as well. So become the go-to person where students want you to be their mentor.
Well, that's one last question, because I was just reminded, soon after becoming program director, I did reach out to Dr. Mahoney, and he reminded me that in starting out, there were going to be few people whose goals would align with mine. Are there strategies that you've utilized, that have helped encourage specifically like faculty buy-in on any kind of initiatives or policy changes that you've made with respect to the residency program? Or is that something that's just come with time and respect? And
I think yes, and yes. But I can tell you, and these were early lessons, but at the time I took over the residency, there was a dramatic slide in interest in anesthesiology. We went from 78 CA1 through CA3 residents down to 28 total residents in a matter of 3 years, because there was 1 year, I think we interviewed 8 American allopathic students. That's all that applied. In 1992, there were 1,600 American students applying to anesthesiology, and by 1994, it was down to 132, and there are only 256 CA1s in the 96 class of CA1s. And that was my very first class that I took over the program. So I sat in front of 7 students. Well, at that time, we basically substituted faculty for residents. We didn't have CRNAs. We took away call from residents. I didn't subject the 28 to the work that the 78 used to do. And I had to have buy-in from the faculty. We had 2 attendings on OB, and we needed to cover the calls, and we needed to focus our attention on what mattered was the residents' education, and we did so. And we committed to the specialty of anesthesiology. I mean, times were crazy then. People were being bribed. There was signing bonuses for anesthesiology residents. I used to have to tell students right off the bat, listen, you're not getting hotel paid, you're not getting your travel, we're not going to pay for your meals during the interview process, and we're not going to bribe you. You're not going to get a signing bonus. But what I can tell you is I'm going to take the hundreds of thousands of dollars that the other programs are bribing students to join them, and I'm going to show you, and I'm going to devote it to an educational program that you're going to want to come, not pay you to come. And then you show them, what you have to offer. And it was a natural phenomenon. And so I had to get buy-in from all of the faculty. The biggest turn was the then vice chair of clinical activities of the department. At odds, and I can still remember, my mentor was at odds between education and getting the clinical work done. When he saw the downside of anesthesiology and the loss of the residents, he also saw that the only place that we could focus our attention that was going to be the saving of the department was making sure that even if we only had 27 residents, that they were the best residents we could recruit. Because without them, we also wouldn't have been able to run things, even with as fewer residents. And I saw him change in his priorities. Whereas now it was devoted to the residents, and everyone could see that the only way to survive was to be able to have the most amazing program that inspires people, the best students, to join us, which then allows us to expand our opportunities and gives the faculty and the residents, sort of common cause to making this the best place, and also the best training program, the best provision of research and clinical work, et cetera. And there really is, I think everyone does drink from the faucet.
Dr. Levine, thanks so much. I want to thank you very much for this opportunity. I've learned quite a lot. I feel energized to incorporate, the advice that you've imparted today into my own practice. And it's great to reconnect after all these years. I'll thank also Dr. Mahoney and Dr. Stahl, the SEA, everyone who helped coordinate this effort. It's been really enlightening. I'm sure it'll be really helpful for future current PDs, med students, applicants, everyone. Thank you so much.
Thank you. And Brian, again, thanks for thinking of me And Erik, thanks for throwing me law balls for the for the interview. Made it effortless, and I hope everyone. I hope some of what I have to offer inspires or helps. And my I guess if people want to reach out, I'm more than happy to help anybody. And offer my advice. So I don't know if there's opportunities for my contact information, but Brian might be able to include it at the end of this podcast. But thank you.
We will absolutely include your contact information, and you don't have to thank me for thinking of you. I'm always thinking of you because you are the role model. I always think, what would Adam do? And Erik, awesome questions. You put together a list of really useful questions for new people in education. So thank both of you, and look forward to talking to both of you a lot soon during the interview season. Okay, I'm cut. Awesome job. Thanks a lot, both of you.
Cool.
Well,
did I say anything that you cringed?
I'll send you the edited
No,
version.
because I will not watch it. I can't. I can't do that. It just won't happen. This was fun, Erik. Good luck in everything. I will tell you, and I didn't get into this. I think there's a whole other opportunity, maybe a panel at the SEA for educating students on how the real problem is before COVID. If someone literally, I just asked them a few metrics of their application, I could literally pinpoint where their competitiveness was, how many applications they needed to send, what percentage they would get invited, and I could within one tell them how they were going to get ranked, where they were going to get matched.
Yeah.
At this point, I'm flying blind because medical educators at medical schools literally have taken away any ability for a student to highlight themselves. There's literally no way to stand out when we're about to be flooded with thousands of applications. And what has, in the guise of debunking, stress, has created more stress than I've ever encountered in my life from students who can't distinguish themselves in the interview process. And they can't, because there's nothing to do.
Right.
And so I never got there, but there is another opportunity to do a panel discussion, because I'm not even sure I have solutions really at this point.
Well, you do have a solution. You have a lot of rotators, and you get to know them that way, and you recruit through your.
And
that's what I'm doing now too.
Right. Well, and that's what we do. But people can't do electives everywhere, and it's unfortunate, and it really has created this unintended consequence of really bad stress during this process. It was bad enough. Now it's impossible. Here's what I think we should be aspiring to, and I don't know, I haven't figured out which forum yet to attack, but why is there 2 tiers of signals? You know how much work that's created and how much anxiety that's created? Why not just give people 10 or 15 of all the same? And then I got a solution. Signals need to happen after the interview, but if you want to have it before as a surrogate to limit the number of interviews, fine, give them 15 across the board. Why make gold and silver? But then give every student 5 post-interview signals. You just know that they signaled you after the interview.
Right. I agree with that. Yeah.
But the thing is, the PDs don't want to do all the interviews and sift through the applications.
Then we should just cap the number of interviews. The fact is that everyone's telling these poor souls that they have to apply to 70 places, and you're not eliminating the amount of work. So making the 2 tiers of the signals it allows you to make a first cut if you just want to use those. But why make 2 tiers? Because now everyone's stressing about how to use golds and silvers. I don't want to keep making up rules that don't exist, because no one knows what to do with these things. I do follow the letter of the law. I'm more than happy to tell every Sinai student and every elective student, don't waste your signals on us. And I did that last year. This year with 15, the AAMC says we're supposed to tell them they're supposed to use their signals on us. And I have told every Sinai student, every elective student, I'm supposed to tell you to waste your signal. I'm giving you an interview, but you're supposed to waste your signal. If you don't want to waste gold, don't. But I'm telling you, you are supposed to use your signal. That's what the AA. I don't make up any. I would never do anything that's beyond what the AAMC says.
I think this year we're going to see a lot of those second looks. So we'll see. We'll see if that's the secret sauce or not.
Like when they come for the second look, are you communicating to them that your rank list is already frozen, or?
So any concept that frozen, not frozen, do it after, no, because I can't do it. We can't do it properly by shoving them all in a couple of days, because we do this over the course of the interview season.
Okay.
So, no resource has the opportunity to do second looks and have like 50 people touring at any one time. So the whole concept of sticking it in a week after interview or before, I don't have the resources to interview and get the rank list in before the second week in February. There's no physical way. I just don't have the opportunity to do that. So if anyone were to lock me in, I wouldn't be able to do a second look if that was the requirement. Gotcha. I'm blind. The leadership of the program, blind. We have no idea. The invite comes from the residents. They organize it entirely, and I could not tell you. The only way, sometimes one of the students on the interview will say, I really enjoyed my second look. And I'm like, again, I don't want to know. I don't really care if they've already been invited. I don't pay attention to it. It doesn't even get charted anywhere. So again, we're going to fill. Everyone's going to fill, particularly. Just the numbers work out to that fact. But don't you want the best, most likely people to thrive? So anyway,
it's going to be tough to get 30 of them, man.
Is the biggest thing really just like resident case logs, or are there other like things, like, are you just like talking about other like expansions, like
yeah, so the biggest hurdle so we are expanding our ambulatory footprint and our office-based footprint. It was easy to justify the educational rationale. We have the cases. There's no shortage of any case. So that wasn't the holdup. And so I said, this is the time to strike when the iron's hot. Like I said, we have no citations. We have full accreditation. And we have no case log, anything. We meet all the metrics, and we have a legitimate rationale for the expansion.
Yeah. So Adam, I meet those criteria, but like that's a big increase. Why did you want to do it? I'm thinking about it. I can think of the benefits. My coordinators can see benefits, and my chair can see benefits. What did you see as the benefit?
There's a couple issues, honestly. 30 doesn't work well in a block of 13. I know that. So yes, I do know that. But 36 is ridiculous. So that's never going to happen. I wanted more flexibility in our internship for sick calls and relief and stuff on the other services that are just challenged by the fact that I'm not going to cover our own.
I have that built into ours.
We do too, but this would make it easier to guarantee it. We have expanded all of the non-clinical scholarly tracks, and this will give me a little bit more opportunity to do that a little bit more. And we are going to have a different footprint in the ambulatory arena, and putting people off-site means that the flexibility goes down, and you do need to have an infrastructure to have more residents that will be off-site. 30 to me seemed like a nice hefty lift that wasn't so egregious that no one would fund it, no one would approve it, and it just seemed like the right. It's a little over 15% increase. That we went, the big lift was when we went from 18 to 24. That was a long time ago. Every time we lifted, to me, is this huge triumph, because I can still remember when we actively went down to 28, we got married to that number. And I had to scrape, and married to it was the HCFA Budgetary Act of 97, where once the cap was set, I was never allowed to increase unless we paid for it ourselves. And so this was triumphant, quite honestly, to get to this level. And quite honestly,
You know, quickly, we should probably like not take each other's time too much, but
no.
I think about this all the time, Adam, and what you're saying, I completely concur. But at some point, we're always filling the gaps that our department is creating for us. So you're saying, and I hear you, I want to have more time for my people on my tracks. It's the constant struggle or battle for CRNA support, more faculty sitting alone. Like, how do you navigate the fact that there's a trade-off here?
So I'll give you the most important thing. I'm absolutely convinced we're one of the best places to become an anesthesiologist, and there should be centers of excellence as opposed to just approving all these places in the periphery to just have residents. So I actually think that the programs that do it best should actually be really big, and the funds should go to them, because that's the best way to salvage this specialty. And I get it. You want to be in resource deprived areas, have them train there, but no one locks and keys them there. That doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to...
That's not even what I mean. I'm saying that our
I get it,
wants to resource deprive us and have you fill the gaps with the residency.
I understand that, but that's okay. But that's where the resources lie. That's the pride of the place. I love that. We are always dependent on the residents. That's why everyone's prideful of having the best residency. That's why no one hesitates to make sure that the residents are taken good care of and that we actually care. So everyone is under that guise. That's not a mystery to everybody. So it's okay. I don't see it as a bad thing. It's not going to feel like we're so overwhelmed that no one knows anybody, or that it's too big and unwielding to care about people's as people. I don't see that as a problem.
You don't, because you and I were very close. You were my mentor. We are close. Do you think you're going to still be able to maintain those kinds of relationships with all those residents?
I still want to be Adam. I still do every other Tuesday in person, my rounds. I still hang out in the ORs. I still interview absolutely every student. There's not an interview day that gets by without me interviewing and being a major part of the recruitment. That's never going to change.
Thanks, guys. Honestly, if you don't mind, the last 30 minutes when we weren't quote unquote interviewing, there's some good stuff.